Today, I'm going to talk about this growing tide of pushback that's quietly forming behind the scenes against the 2035 engine ban. What we're seeing here is serious, sustained lobbying by the major car makers, by trade bodies, and by countries saying, if we continue down this road, if we don't change, there's going to be massive repercussions for livelihoods, for jobs, for the industry as a whole. In this video, I'll get into exactly what's happening and take a look at the government's response released just days ago that suggests real change might actually be on the horizon. Let's get into it. Well, it just hasn't worked, has it? This idea that the public would willingly adopt electric vehicles. The thing is, when a revolutionary technology comes along, we generally don't need years of subsidy for it to catch on. If it's truly better than what came before, it will just work. That's the beauty of it. That, I'm afraid, is not electric vehicles for everyone. Rural drivers, expensive charging away from home, steep depreciation. It's all taken its toll, and what we now have is this private buyer segment who just aren't willing to have an EV, not willing to entertain the idea of having an electric vehicle. Almost all of the growth that's depicted, that now comes from tax incentivized fleet and business purchases at this point, which in itself isn't sustainable from a financial point of view. Despite this waning demand though, car makers, they're still forced to produce these cars that not many private buyers want to buy at all, but they're not taking it lying down. Then this is what I want to get into. So Jaguar Land Rover, Nissan, Toyota, Porsche, Volkswagen, Stellantis, Mercedes-Benz, Renault, BMW, amongst others, they've all now publicly pushed back and effectively said, this is going to be the death of us. This is going to be the death of us if we keep on this path. It's going to lead to massive industry regression. It's going to obliterate jobs and livelihoods, as well as hand the entire market off to cheap Chinese automakers. It was also announced last week that Germany's largest industrial trade union, IG Metall, they'd also joined in on this push to have the guillotine ban dropped. When the entire industry and its trade bodies are making this much noise, it's pretty hard not to listen, and that's exactly what has happened in the EU over the last couple of days, with it being announced that their zero-emission vehicle review is going to be brought forward and completed by the end of this year. So someone, somewhere, is listening. One big area that's been overlooked for quite a while now, but is expected to be considered in this review, is synthetic fuels, or e-fuels. And this is interesting stuff. This is what I want to talk a bit about. So for the uninitiated, this is the way the F1's heading. Starting next year, ramping up to 2030, it's the way that they're going. This 100% renewable fuel. It's also something that many manufacturers, Porsche, BMW, Renault, Volkswagen, to name a few, have been petitioning to have considered rather than this blinkered approach to electric-only vehicles. Porsche in particular, they've really invested in this with their plant in Chile, which is now producing a 100% sustainable carbon neutral fuel, and it's done by capturing CO2 from the atmosphere and water. The real beauty of this is you can put it straight into the tank of your existing car, no modifications needed. It is a solution that exists right now, and surely that's worthy of some consideration. We've been so focused on electric vehicles, despite all their shortcomings being blatantly obvious at this point, we remain so focused, so one-track minded on electric vehicles that stuff like this doesn't even get a look in, and surely it should. It means that there's no new purchase of a car. You don't need to buy a new car. It means there's no modifications required to your existing car. And it also means that there's no huge initial carbon footprint to mine all the metals for that car's battery if it happens to be an electric vehicle. Now the downside, I don't pretend this is the answer to all our problems. There are shortcomings, and one of them is it's very expensive. In its current low production infantile state, as you might expect. In Porsche, well, I take this with a pinch of salt, it's a bit wishy-washy. It's not far from when you're talking about an EV and you say, oh yeah, but in a couple of years the battery technology is going to be perfect and it's going to do 1,000 miles per charge. That's then. We need to deal with what's here and now. So it's a bit like that, but Porsche reckon with this ramped up to proper production levels, that figure is going to fall to a rate that's comparable with current petrol pricing. But as I say, I do take that with a bit of pinch of salt. But if the only downside that we're facing with this is the price, again, it's still worth consideration, surely. Now, one crowd that don't like this, environmentalists, they're not a fan, they don't like this idea. What they say is, well, why don't we just use the energy that's used to produce this fancy fuel? Why don't we just put that directly into cars as electricity? But it's kind of missing the point, isn't it? That puts us right back at square one. How do we get that electricity to, say, the near 50% of the UK population who don't have a driveway, who don't have a private charger, for instance? We could plummet through the public chargers and put a 70% markup on it. Yeah, no thanks, we're not really solving any problems with that, are we? The point is, this fuel can be produced in the middle of nowhere and then shipped off to wherever it needs to be far more efficiently than you could do with charging a big battery up and trying to shift that. Again, you could argue, well, you could do that. You could shift a battery, you could fill that up with electricity, ship that off to wherever it needs to be. But the thing is, that lithium battery is going to be far less efficient. E-fuel in its petrol form is about 50 times more energy dense. So there's about 50 times more energy density over electricity stored in a lithium battery. So you could do it, but logistically you're going to need a 50 times bigger truck, 50 times bigger boat. Now, the German Association of Automotive Industry, they're also pushing for this e-fuel to be recognised, as is Italy, so it's big news. And as we move forward towards these 2035 targets, here's hoping it does at least get a look in. We need to consider these other solutions, these other carbon reduction solutions, if that is the whole point. These ones that sit on the periphery and aren't given the time of day, and e-fuels, I think, is exactly that. Now, in case you're thinking at this point, well, hang on, this is all to do with the EU, we're in the UK, what does that matter? Well, here's the thing, if the EU sneezes, we still catch a cold. We still have EU emission targets. The GB type approval for road vehicles in the UK mimics EU standards for continuity, and the UK still, quote, uses international standards wherever possible. So it's very likely whatever's going to happen over there will sooner or later be echoed here as well. Now, here's a final bit of food for thought for you, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below here. I am genuinely interested to hear them. So one of the benefits that's touted of these e-fuels is that they're free of sulfur and nitrogen, amongst other emission producing chemicals. In recent years, these emissions are what the Euro standards have targeted relentlessly, and resulted in manufacturers having to implement reliability sacrificing systems like aggressive EGRs, wet belts, low friction gearbox clutch plates, and so on. But if the fuel doesn't produce these emissions in the first place, then there's a case to be made there to say, well, simpler emission controls may well be sufficient. Without doubt, the biggest contributor to the downfall of mechanical reliability in the last few years, leaving aside planned obsolescence by manufacturers, relates to these emission-inspired controls, so the removal of them would very likely lead to more longevity from our cars. There's a true irony that in a bid to enforce more environmentally friendly cars, we've started to build some of the most complex, short-lived, throwaway, part-churning cars that we've ever had. If we want to incentivise anything, it should be longevity, and e-fuels might just be a step towards that. It's at least worth taking a look at, surely. Now, as a parting note, if you do happen to be in the market for a used car, please do remember, one of our channel sponsors is Vehicle Score, who provide very good HPI checks. They'll tell you if a car's ever been subject to an insurance write-off, if it's got outstanding finance on it, amongst a host of other information you're going to want to know before you commit your money. I'll add a 20% discount voucher for them in the description below, and as ever, thank you so much for watching. Do hit subscribe if you haven't already, hit like, let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you for the next one.